Greetings from the UNESCO Regional Office for Southern Africa. As you know, the COVID-19 pandemic has really caused severe disruption and adverse effects on the entire education system and sector at all levels and in all regions and countries. And it forced governments and organizations to really rethink the systems of teaching and learning when the lockdowns happened. If you go back more than a year ago, in March, when the pandemic really exploded globally, by March last year, most countries here in the Southern Africa region had imposed total lockdowns, and that led to the closure of schools, of polytechnics, and of universities as well. And during that time, JET Education had conducted a South African boot camp, which was meant to build research capacities of university students in South Africa. And UNESCO reached out to JET at that time to collaborate on this initiative, bringing in a broader scope and also a broader geographical coverage, working with universities in the SADC region. This initiative was then called the SADC Researchers Challenge, and it was launched under the hashtag Open Up Your Thinking. It really provided opportunities for young and also not so young researchers from different universities in the SADC region to undertake research on the threats of COVID-19 and the implications it has on education, on teaching and learning, and also on continuity of research.
We are privileged to have the requisite political will in favor of a just recovery, for building forward better for the region. In this regard, SADC member states have committed themselves to integrated and sustainable development. In the new document for SADC, the regional document, the RISDIP 2020-2030, we have a number of cross-cutting issues, which include gender, youth, environment and climate change, and disaster risk management. For the education and training area, one of the key elements relates to the propagation of ESD in the region. To this end, I want to once again reiterate the relevance and timeliness of initiatives such as the SADC Researchers Challenge, Open Up Your Thinking, which is very relevant to the RISDIP policy framework.
The focus that we took was education for sustainable development and COVID-19 in Southern Africa. And we were particularly interested in the intersecting perspectives on why water, food, and livelihoods matter in transforming education for sustainable futures. We chose this focus because of its prominence as the COVID-19 pandemic broke, and also its continued impact. One of the things that happened very, very soon after COVID-19 broke in the Southern African region is we saw huge spread of food insecurity at quite a serious rate, and loss of livelihoods, and also the sort of closure of education and water issues. So we thought, what is happening here, and what can education do to respond? So we were 15 researchers from 8 SADC countries. We did this research in about six to 8 weeks. To the main research, where we worked with a number of participants online. Interviews, 81 participants we managed to interview online, and 55 online survey participants, and we were able to generate quite a lot of very interesting data and a huge literature review as well that we did using a critical realist systems inquiry approach. We worked mainly with qualitative data, and this is just a little background picture to, in a way, just remind us of what this pandemic has actually shown up in our region. It's shown up this massive challenges around hunger and unemployment. Those also in terms of, our findings were so interesting because they were actually corroborated findings that were coming out on the way in which the COVID-19 pandemic was, in a way, reducing the potential of the SDGs that everybody had just started to work on. So we looked, at our findings quite carefully. We'll hear from some of our researchers in a minute or two. But overall, what we then decided to do from that was to say, look, we need to have a transformative direction for ESD. There's no going back to normal, because that normal was not a good place to be for many people. And ultimately, what we want to argue for in the SADC region is that we should give real meaning to SDG target 4.7, not just see ESD as a technical or a pedagogical process, but as a systemic and emancipatory transformation process. So
I think the whole idea of building back better provides a really important framework for us to think about our work. The work about sustainability can't be stopped by the pandemic. It has to continue. And in fact, I think what the Build Back Better framework does is that it encourages us to re-intensify our efforts in that regard, to strengthen our arguments, to strengthen the evidence base of the importance of education in relation to sustainable development.
Systemic approach that the research and that this document is presenting, and the importance of addressing intersectionally, intersectorally, education related to sustainable development, related to food, water, economic crisis, really challenging paradigms. That is something that really caught my attention in this report, starting from reimagining education and talking about radical education, and really placing education in a framework of not reproducing the current social inequalities and the current multiple forms of discrimination, but rather an education that is actually emancipatory and transformative. So I think that this framing of questioning the paradigm of education in itself is fundamental if we are really trying to rethink the role and the place of human beings vis-a-vis the environment, vis-a-vis all other forms of life, which is really at the center stage of succeeding an education for sustainable development. So I really appreciated the very brave and bold paradigmatic framing of education that the report brings.
First of all, to transform our mind. That is why I'm saying this study is the methodology is the first lesson, the first takeaway for me to academy, because we have to transform the way we are teaching. We have to transform the way we are doing research. We have to transform the way we are doing community services. Looking to this study, I realized that we can bring from those recommendations lessons for teaching. We can bring more thematics for research, and we can bring thematic for community service. So to do this, we have to transform our mind.
We need to, we should embrace advancing policy, transforming learning environments, building capacities of educators, empowering and mobilizing youth, and accelerating local level actions. We need to integrate the communities. We need to improve our cities, to have improved clean cities, quality water, quality air, healthy soils, good and human and animal health.
I think one of the things that came through strongly for me today was this intersection, or this tension between being an activist and being a researcher. The methodology that you saw presented today is very much built on both these foundations. We wanted people to be activists while they do really good research. I saw some people in the chat also refer to it, and many of the presenters. If we can get our heads around this and get more activists to do really good research, and to get more researchers to be understanding what activists do, I think we can go a long way as a SADC region and as a global community. Jack recently recognized the young researchers, well, all the researchers, but particularly the young researchers that were involved in this thematic report. Their names are in the report, but I actually want to say their names. I think it's really important that we give them this recognition. So Hayla, thank you so much for your leadership, as always, in the region and the work you do. And Jairo, Jososile, Vilimpini, thank you so much for your leadership and your guidance. But there are a few others as well. Rachel Neville from South Africa, Anna James, also from South Africa, Ayanda Moyo from Zimbabwe, Esteri Kunkwenzu from Malawi, Domingos Mironi from Mozambique, Gibson Mpepo from Malawi, Lwanda Makwelani from South Africa, Pila Diyanti from South Africa, Rutindo Mushishi from Zimbabwe, Selemani Makwita from Tanzania, Yukwai Masariri from Zimbabwe, and Zenani Mflanga from Eswatini.